Well, how's it going, everybody? Welcome. This is the RambleCast. It is March 12th, 2025, and I'm your host, Cody Toombs. And with me, I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So, oh boy, this week, if you play with stocks at all, this has been such a wild week. Honestly, like, I kind of don't know what to say about it beyond let it look. It was within the span of a week that the stock market lost over 1,000 points twice. I seem to remember somebody once saying that that's a reason that the current president should step down. But
No, I love waking up every day to uh new rules about Canadian steel being twice as expensive, and then 8 hours later it's revoked. Like, this is a fine and normal way to live. It's definitely not tiring whatsoever. Diablo said we see two Codys.
oh, it's the Google Meet little mini preview. Sometimes I forget to close that or minimize it. Okay, it's gone.
Oh, I was trying to see if my post about being live worked. I think my Mastodon server is down again. Oopsie daisies.
The common Mastodon L. Um, I mean, I'm not actually going to beat up on Mastodon here. It just happens from time to
No,
time. And hey,
this is the
Twitter spent
this
more
is the
time down than all the Mastodon servers combined. So,
that's true. That's true. I don't want to hear again about how Mastodon server uptime is an issue. Actually, it's not really an issue anymore because everyone already scaled up. But
well,
um,
everybody already scaled up, and the user count never went up to match. So,
yeah. So speaking of things, Apple Intelligence is being really dumb. So the latest iOS update, Apple released a new iOS update this week. It patched like some WebKit vulnerability, so just kind of bug fixes. But it also re-enabled Apple Intelligence, or rather, when you updated, you'd get a new prompt for it that had a continue button that would turn it on, and you could not close out of it.
mm-hmm.
Um, and this also happened for the previous iOS 18 bug fix update, the point two release, I think, or point one. And Mac Rumors mentions that this mostly just affects iPhones, but I saw a couple reports of it happening on Mac as well. I do have M1 Macs that can run Apple Intelligence, but I turned it off, and I've not had this issue yet. I don't know if I've installed the latest update, but I already did one of them that re-enabled this. So I haven't had this issue, but I have seen other people complaining about this. I don't know if this affects iPads at all, but a lot of iPhones and some Macs. And no one seems to know if this is a bug or not. I would certainly hope so, because this is a thing that I don't really want on, because when it was on, it was, first of all, it was breaking my notifications on my Mac. It caused like all notifications to be delayed by like 5 seconds or something like that. Like, I'd hear a Slack beep and then not see the actual alert for a long time. And even when I had like the notification summary thing off, so it wasn't supposed to be processing anything, it was just broken. I assume that got fixed at some point, but I've not turned it back on. And it's just a thing that a lot of people don't care about or want enabled, and it also takes up more space on your phone, because it has to have a local large language model. I think this article says it's potentially up to 7 gigs, but when this came out. I think that was like 3. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. But yeah, not cool. Not cool, Apple.
So yeah, I haven't installed the latest macOS update. I too turned off anything relating to, or I think I turned off everything relating to Apple Intelligence on notifications. But yeah, I just don't see a reason for it. I'm, just flat out not interested in what it offers, because outside of the very assorted comical instances that we've seen where the notification messages say things that are just ridiculous, offensive, or kind of like a silly mashup of whatever 2 or 3 topics are. Outside of that, I just don't see a reason for it. It's not interesting. So, that being said, yeah, I really wouldn't want it on a phone, because like, plain and simple, that's going to shorten your battery life. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So yeah, I would certainly turn it off in all the locations. That said, you're hoping, you think it is, and you're hoping it's a bug. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say not a chance. I think this is 100% on purpose. They want everyone to think it's a bug, and maybe there's even some sort of heuristic for who it re-enables and who it doesn't re-enable. That said, no, I think this is totally on purpose, because they realize that early versions were not doing well, and they don't want everyone to turn it off and leave it off forever. They want this to be on. Because frankly, they need beta testers. And they need more data to determine, is it working? Is it not working? What's not working? So, yeah, I'm pretty willing to bet this isn't actually a bug. It's just something that they're hoping everyone ignores.
Yeah, and I will say this is really disappointing because, as far as Apple lets you go with their own devices, which is not that far in the case of the iPhone, right? You can't install most emulators, third-party browsers with different engines, all that stuff. But insofar as the customization that they do allow, they have historically been pretty good about respecting user settings. Like, I can change the default, like the menu on my Mac for changing the default web browser. It's just a drop-down menu with Safari as just one of the options. And I changed it, and it has never changed back to Safari. And, same thing with, iPhone, that doesn't really try to revert your settings or anything like that, which is, that was one of the things I appreciated a lot after using a mix of Windows and Linux for a long time, because that is something Windows doesn't do. Windows hates you for changing settings. Every time you update, I still have, my gaming PC with Windows 11 on it, and if you do a lot of after updating, most of the time it'll ask you, like, hey, do you want to finish setting up your PC? And by setting up, we mean using Edge. And of course, like, when you first open Edge, as happens if you click like anything in the start menu, and you don't look super closely at what you're clicking, you give it permission to like import all your data from Chrome on a recurring basis to like kind of trick you into using Edge. A lot of stuff that they're now legally banned from doing in Europe. Europe recognized this as anti-competitive behavior and told them to cut it out. But of course, we don't get anything like that here. So Windows is like, it's incredibly user hostile, and Microsoft Edge specifically is maybe the most user hostile piece of software I've ever used in my life. Like, it is astounding how much it hates you and what you stand for. Like, even when I like fully, like, I tried using Edge for a couple months, and And like even after you go in all the settings and like turn everything off that's annoying, it'll just turn it back on after a while. Like I turned off all the like recommended articles on the new tab page, and like a week later it was just back. It's like I told you not to turn that off. And of course, like it makes it really annoying to change like the default search engine and stuff. It just hates you for existing. So that's the thing Microsoft has been very happy about for a long time, and Apple has mostly not done that. Like I can't. Again, Apple functions differently where they don't actually let you use a lot of options in the first place. But once they do, I don't recall an instance like this of it changing. So, assuming it's not a bug, pretty disappointing from Apple, and kind of a big change from how they've normally operated.
Yeah. Well, so I'm certainly not about to defend Microsoft here, because anti-patterns are pretty much the company's main product now. That being said, I don't think I don't think Apple has been quite as good at respecting user choices as you give them credit for. But most of the things that they don't respect tend to be more targeted at like specific types of users, specific types of cases. So, you know, like if you're a developer, there's a lot more stuff that gets sort of intentionally broken by like updates text code or OS updates. There's various things that happen if you use certain accessibility options. There are certain things that happen with I can't list off too many good examples that wouldn't take a lot of time to explain right now, but they exist. And some of that I'm sure is just Apple doesn't necessarily care about random edge cases where the user choices you're thinking of are certainly more mainstream.
Right. Like their normal level of disdain for developers aside.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So hey, I'm not gonna go fully
the subhuman filth building software for their products. Their feelings don't count.
Never have. Anyway, so yeah, I nobody's good at this, but Apple does at least tend to be less awful at it. Regardless, I'm pretty sure in this instance, Apple has eaten so poorly on this whole AI situation. They've been made fun of. They've kind of been turned into the ugly duckling, and which is hilarious to me also because honestly, I don't think any users. Well, I think very few users care. The vast majority of people, you could tell, couldn't care less about this AI stuff. It's a narrow minority that are really excited by this, and for those people, yeah, they of course they have Apple Intelligence turned on. They want it. That's how it works. They're into this, so fine for them. That's great. For the people that don't want it, it's not gonna it won't make any difference if you make Apple Intelligence better. They already don't want it. And I think that's going to become the sort of the bad look on Apple. And it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I get the impression that like the really bad AI art generator is actually a thing that normal people want because
yes,
they're dumb.
Well, hold on. I think I talked about this on Ramble, but maybe not. My mom used to have a couple of goats, and I stumbled across a picture. Coincidentally, the timing was just ridiculous. I stumbled across a picture of one of the goats on like the same day that that bad AI art generator came out. So I tried sticking the picture in. I showed the result to my mom, and she immediately goes, "Oh, Cassie," which was the name of the goat, of course. And she recognized it. Like straight up, she immediately recognized it was her goat, and she loved the image. And it was cute, it's kitschy, and it's endearing in its own way. So I get that. I appreciate that this is a thing that is meant for people who like or who would enjoy that sort of a thing. We're not those people, you know. That's just a difference of type of people. It's sort of like I remember when FaceTime first came out and I said, "Okay, it's neat that they came out with this thing no one's ever going to use because most people don't want to make video calls." Well, turns out I was just not I was not the target audience because I don't like making video calls. Most people, or at least a lot of people, apparently do. And so I just didn't recognize that that was a thing. The vast majority, or a large group, I shouldn't say majority, I don't know if it's majority, but a large group of people aren't into that. So cheers, I think that's just difference of groups. But there's also, outside of catchy, cuteness, there's also no use for this thing. That's it. It's not useful. Just it's just a neat little gimmick that is now on everyone's computers that has an M1.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because I feel like Apple, out of everyone, was in the best place to make local AI useful and kind of just something that was working in the background to do cool stuff, and that hasn't really materialized. Um, certainly better than whatever Microsoft is doing with Copilot, which is like, first it's a sidebar in Windows 11, then it's also a sidebar in Windows 10, even though Microsoft said they were done updating Windows 10, but they really need AI users, so that went in there. And then it got like detached from the sidebar, and then it turned into a web app. And then just recently, they made a native Copilot app again for Windows. So and again, it's still just like a chatbot in there. It's just a chat window. It's not it trying to do anything lower level. Nothing like that has materialized yet. I know, like, I think if you have a Copilot Plus PC, there is like local image generation, but it will still send the result to a server for like safety checking. So I don't know if that's like half credit.
I would call that zero credit, but okay. So I guess I'm gonna put this to you. You said that you think Apple was in the best place to do local AI, or to do a good version of local AI. And I hope I'm not misquoting you there, but I'm not really sure what that means. Because I don't think, first off, I don't think Apple was in a very good place to do much of anything with AI, just because it's very clear that their research into the field is very, very not matured yet, and their efforts have shown that much. So that much, I think it's just clear they aren't there where everyone else is. Even if they were, like, Google is, technologically speaking, I think, in a better place. Obviously, Apple is better at this from a marketing and put it in the hardware perspective, but Google is in a better place with the actual technology. And so far, I don't think Google has even done a good job of producing very many examples of, here's what we can do with AI, and we're like, this is a thing, local or otherwise, that a lot of people are really going to use. I mean, if they can't even really get it right on the server, I'm not sure that they're going to get it right on local. And Apple is, I think, in a worse position than Google is for this.
Yeah, I know. Like the Pixel phones are using Gemini Nano for like better call screening and like transcription and translation and stuff. That's kind of cool. The main places I see it being useful on a computer for like normal people is if we're talking about like on a Mac, I think it would help uh, Spotlight indexing. Like if Spotlight search could get a lot more. Spotlight's very good about, well, except apps. Spotlight's pretty good with indexing everything on my computer that it has access to, and to the point where like I can search for images based on text that are in the images and stuff like that when it works. Again, it's been on and off buggy, but like that's the kind of thing that AI is very good at, is like taking different inputs and sort of organizing it into databases. So I think like there's probably a much better version of Spotlight that Apple could be doing with this that they're not. um the other main upgrade I think where this would be useful is a Siri that is not stupid. And that was one of the promise features. And we have this as a next topic, but that's the thing that Apple is continuously delaying. Is I think this was promised with the general release of Apple Intelligence. I don't know if it was ever put off initially, but it's been delayed again and again and again. And now Apple said in a statement to Reuters that the promise upgrades to Siri would be delayed until 2026. So not anytime soon. And that's the crazy thing to me, because that's what Apple's platforms needed the most. Not even a Siri that like would rely on generative AI, just like a Siri that was better in really any way. Like I think that would be helpful, that especially tied into like a better Spotlight. It's just something I can like ask, where's this thing on my computer? What was I working on? Like I think for all of the problems that Windows Recall had, which were all justified, and Microsoft is addressing all of them. I do think that was some like kind of an interesting idea of like turning your activity into something that's searchable, in a way that a lot of other interfaces have tried and failed to do. But it, that has yet to materialize, because it turns out making that feature secure is a tough ask of Microsoft. And
particularly at Microsoft.
Apple's having difficulty making a Siri that is useful.
Yeah, so okay, I'll grant you that some of what you listed is a good use of local AI models. So yeah, that's valid. I do still struggle with the notion that like the chatbot side is that useful. Obviously having the ability to search and index stuff, that is a lot more functional. And I think that would also require a much smaller model. Having a chatbot that can sort of interpret intent, that I think requires a larger model, and one that's probably a little harder to process. Which
I would agree. I don't think there's a whole lot of utility in having like a thing to talk to on your computer that's built locally, for the same reason that like Siri on the Mac initially was kind of just whatever. Like no one uses it because it's just not really the best way to do most things.
Yeah.
Right. Siri makes sense on a phone because you're more often like in your car and need to use voice controls or doing, something else hands free. But on my Mac, it's easier to just like type in the name of the file I want and, open it.
Yeah, the one really good use case on a Mac, and I would argue the only use case I've heard of yet that was actually a good Siri use case, is literally just dictation. And You don't need all of Siri. You just need Siri to be able to do dictation, which was a thing that we've had for a decade prior to Siri coming out. So,
yeah, that would be cool. I know, like, one of the other, like the some of the places I've been really impressed with the newer Gen AI models is like OCR, but that's something that Apple already has pretty good on their
yeah.
devices. Like, I can pretty frequently open an image or a PDF in preview and just select the text, and it works most of the time. So that you don't need an LLM for that. It's just something that they seem to be very good at. And also, translation is has been a pretty good use case for that. I know you can, like, right click text on a Mac or an iPhone, or hold it down on an iPhone and click translate. I don't know if that service is cloud based or not. But yeah, there's stuff like that that I haven't really seen Apple try. It's mostly just been here's the same writing tools that you've seen in every other implementation, and here's the generator to make your AI slop photos. And the only thing I saw in Apple Intelligence that, like, is kind of neat to me is in Mail, where it would put like one line summaries of the email in the like list of messages instead of just the title of the email. But even that's like, I mean, it's like kind of useful, but it's not something I'm gonna turn on
Yeah.
the whole model thing for. It's just like, I guess that's neat.
Yeah, and yeah, speed and performance obviously factor into this. How much you really want certain things to take longer than if you just did them yourself. But you'd have the advantage of automation, or semi-automation in some cases. Of course, also most of those features aren't even supported yet. It's just more idealized. So I don't know. Regardless, I'm still of the opinion that the average user, and again, we're not talking about you and me. We're talking about just average random teenager, neighbor, family, whatever. I think they don't care about any of this. They don't want it. They'd rather it was turned off. And that's not to say they'll never care or never want it, but it's more along the lines of, while this is still this like early stage where it's not really working and it doesn't really do much and most people can't use it, they don't want that. They don't want to be the beta testers for this. And so I think Apple turning it back on is sort of just a big middle finger to a lot of them. And it's also making Apple look bad because, again, like, the summaries of notification groups and just all the things that Apple Intelligence has goofed up on. Yeah, that's the stuff you probably shouldn't have. Not
yeah. Like,
you shouldn't have regular people seeing that yet. You should make sure that like, you can't make it perfect, but you got to make it better than this before you shove it on people. And especially shove it on people who already turned it off.
Yeah, I think this will be the lasting legacy for this Gen AI rush to me, is how it has encouraged tech companies to just lose whatever shame they have left.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just for Google to go on stage and for like 2 hours do a like completely incomprehensible product launch for 50 different things that all have the same name, and then have like a full promo video for Google search that is wrong, and like The Verge spots it immediately. And then the week after that, launching their Google AI summaries that are telling people to eat glue. Like, just that, and then plus looking at Apple, where I was watching WWDC, and just like they show off like you can make images, and then they show like the worst art you've ever seen in your entire life. which immediately became emoji in my work Slack. So that's now just a reaction that people use all the time. Like, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and I feel like almost everyone in the situation, everyone working at these companies knows it. Like, it's it's just wild. That's been the main thing, is like how far we've all fallen.
Yeah.
um and I
It's
think that's just part of the general struggle of these companies really have run out of ways to market this stuff to normal people. And that's why we see the same ads over and over again for like, oh, it can summarize your emails, because no one's figured out how to make normal people use this besides that. And you know, uh cheating on school papers and making weird art.
yeah. I mean, every company has done their mistakes. I mean, all we need to do is talk about Samsung's keynote presentations where Michael Bay stormed off stage, or that really creepy one with the drunk housewives and the kid doing whatever that kid was up to, and and the presenter who was clearly like, not in real life, but very clearly they had a storyline where he was smashing one of the drunk housewives. Anyway, like, every company has their dumb moments in both what they announce and what they release as products. And Google certainly is, oh boy, very good at this. They have so many products that they've come to regret, not even years later, sometimes hours later. And any person could have told them, don't release this product. Don't even think about this product. Don't even try to make this product, because the idea of the product is bad. By the way, in case it isn't obvious, we're totally going to be talking about another one of those in a minute too. We're just foreshadowing all of our topics today. But yeah, I agree. I think the AI revolution is about 2/3 just early stages of things, and there's going to be a lot of stumbles and missteps, and about 1/3 of just total people are overhyped and acting stupid because of it. And when I say people, I mean the executives, the engineers, the whomever, the product designers especially. They think throw AI into anything and it's just bound to succeed. And the reality is, one, no, it's not. And two, by throwing AI into it, chances are you actually just made the product worse than if you had just spent like another couple weeks developing decent algorithms.
Yeah, and I will say also, as someone who is a developer slash power user, uh, I think it's also a bit annoying that Apple hasn't really tried to like let anyone use Apple Intelligence except Apple. Like, I know apps can like show the same writing tools prompt that Apple made, but like it's not just like a model I can like ask things and have it return stuff, or like make, you know, little like shortcut scripts on my Mac to do stuff that, you know, need Apple Intelligence to do something. Um, I don't know. So it's annoying. But yeah, so it's turning itself on when it's not wanted, and Siri is still not fixed. So not going well.
Yeah, so I guess do we now lead into that other topic about Siri being delayed, or did we just basically cover that?
I mean, I think we covered it. Like, it's just delayed until 2026, and Apple has not said why. And
I think we just spent the last 20 minutes talking about why.
Yeah. So Yeah, speaking of stupid tech stuff, Sonos has canceled its streaming video player. This was a thing that was rumored a while ago. It was supposed to be I believe, Android TV powered thing. Was that confirmed?
Well, Android powered, not
Oh yeah,
necessarily
right.
Android TV, or rather,
Yeah.
definitely not Android TV. And by all accounts, it was basically just a whole lot of Android stuff, but with it basically would have just been a fairly standard streaming box. However, it would have had HDMI pass through and switching. It would have presented an overlay. So this is sort of borrowing a little bit of what like the old original Google TV had, because it did do the overlay with a pass through. And they made promises like universal search, and supposedly a core universal interface that was going to actually play the videos, which I would almost bet money that's where this actually failed. Though they're kind of spinning this as something else. But I honestly just don't think they could have gotten the deals worked out with any of the larger streaming companies to offer that kind of a UI experience. And yeah, this was supposed to be the all-in-one perfect streaming device. However, it offered very little that anyone actually wants. Like, the central interface for playing sounds kind of nice. Other than that, it sounds like what everyone else already does, and maybe worse. So, yeah, not really sure what they thought they were going to accomplish with this. And we obviously spent, as you said in Discord, we spent like an hour just absolutely dumpstering on this thing. The idea of it, as was reported by The Verge, I think was flawed. I think Sonos thinking that they could break into this industry was a deeply misguided attempt. I think the idea that very many people would want to buy a Sonos device to do this was also misguided. Mostly because I think Sonos is one of those companies that thinks more people like and respect them than actually like and respect them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, so I was obviously of the opinion, I'm fairly certain you were too, that Sonos was just deeply, deeply wrong in thinking that this is a product that they should make, and we both called it out pretty vociferously. So it has now been canceled. I'm gonna
Yeah,
I don't
it
know
was.
that I want to step out on a limb here, but I'm gonna throw this one weird theory out. I wonder if they wanted people to know about this hardware to judge reactions, kind of like how there was infamously the Sonic trailer that leaked or whatever, and as soon as people saw it, they're like, no, that's creepy, that's weird, we hate it. And so the studio was like, all right, you know what, send it back, find a new way to render the hedgehog and make it look not terrible. I'm wondering a little bit if Sonos kind of leaked this just to see if they could get a little bit more like outside opinion, and once they had it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what, let's just kill this thing, there's no way it's gonna work.
I think the Sonic thing was the first trailer they released. I don't think that was a leak.
Really? I
If
would have sworn
yeah,
that was a leak.
I
mean,
think
it
that
could have
was
been
the first
trailer.
trailer they made, and then yeah, they like pulled it and did it again.
Regardless,
Yeah,
same
yeah. I mean,
concept.
it wouldn't surprise me if part of this was public reception, but also part of just Sonos is, they've got a new CEO. They've got, I'm sure, like so much internal mess going on right now that everything's getting revamped or canceled or reworked. So not really surprising.
So, for quick clarity, because you said they've got a new CEO, they don't actually have a new CEO technically. He is an interim CEO.
Oh, yeah.
His name is Tom Conrad, and he replaced the former CEO who stepped down at the end of last year because basically the company's reputation took a massive nosedive after the app that ruined a lot of functionality for devices, and it straight up abandoned or like stopped supporting several existing devices. So yeah, it was a very deeply unpopular app update, which killed a lot of their hardware functionality. Anyway, so the new CEO has stepped in and is typically interim CEOs don't make a lot of major decisions like killing whole new products. But in this instance, I wouldn't be surprised if leadership at the company, or I'm assuming they have a board. I'm assuming the board probably collectively agreed that this new product was not going to be a good direction. So yeah, I'm guessing they probably just they collectively agreed kill it, and the new CEO was the hatchet man in this instance. But speaking of CEOs, or speaking of that situation with the CEO, I'm going to be honest. The state of Sonos as it is today, and as this article points out, Sonos only really had one major product coming out this year, and it was going to be this streaming player. That's not to say they don't have other products coming out, but it's sort of just rehashes of their existing product lines. Mm-hmm. Seeing as they have basically nothing coming and their valuation has been sinking continuously, I gotta be honest. First off, I don't think that this CEO is going to be sticking around just because, again, interim CEO. But moreover, I'm starting to think that the company has to be looking at either like escape routes or some sort of emergency reprioritize or reprior. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to say that. Emergency off ramp for how they're handling business. Which, as I see it, I wouldn't be surprised if they announce a new CEO in a few months, whose job is basically to try to get the valuation as high as possible before selling it. Or at least try to get the best deal they can. Like, start rejiggering the company so that it is attractive as a sale, rather than continuing its current product ambitions. It's a hunch. I could be wrong, but that's kind of where I think they're sitting these days.
I mean, as someone who is not a business major, but I still feel smart, is I honestly think that, like, if they don't do that, then they should just be like a new Belkin. Like, I think like this is a proven model of just making like very average accessory stuff, but like you make it look really nice and sort of have it jive with like the Apple aesthetic ecosystem. And that's just gonna sustain you for like decades. It just works. You can do that. So maybe they should, go back to making the headphones they were gonna make. Keep making speakers, make some other dumb stuff. And like as long as it works and like you stop annoying your users, like maybe that's the pivot. It's just you be another Belkin, you be Belkin, like upscale Anchor. Like you can do this.
I don't disagree with you, but I think I think the cautionary tale of a company that sort of did that is HTC. It was a company that was making white label phones, or effectively making white label phones. And at a certain point, they rose up. They became one of the premier Android handset developers or manufacturers. They were generally widely liked. There was a lot of popularity in HTC products. And then a certain point came where they started fumbling. Some of this from maybe taking a few too many ambitious leaps with like material choices on their phones, or trying to get a little too creative with, let's say, the camera sensor. Anyone who remembers the ultra pixel camera, you know what I'm talking about. I think they made enough goof ups. It put them into a bad place, and they were facing the same situation I just described. You know, they weren't really making enough money to be sustainable. They didn't have enough of a future to keep things going, and I dare say that their product line had earned a bit of a bad reputation at that point. Not to say there weren't still plenty of fans, there were, but you know, a relatively small number of fans isn't going to sustain a company making its own products very well. And I think Sonos is slipping into that sort of state where the only people who still want to buy Sonos stuff is actual Sonos fans. I don't think they have a lot of new fans coming along, and Sonos has done plenty to violate the trust of existing customers, alienate potential customers, and just generally not attract anyone who doesn't care. So they're in that bad spot. So I'm not sure if going the Belkin route is really an option for them. And for what it's worth, I'm not even sure Belkin is doing that well with the Belkin route anymore.
I don't know. They seem to still be around. I think maybe they just have a really sweet deal, and like I can walk into a Target and their stuff is there. You can get a USB cable for $40, and I guess enough people do that to keep them alive.
Yeah, that's probably the only reason why they're still a Belkin, is because they're not just because they're making overpriced products, but because they're just the only company that is making sure that they have that distribution chain in existence. It's sort of like how back when Google bought Motorola, or well, technically Motorola Mobility, when they bought that department, part of what Google even acknowledged is Motorola has a distribution chain. Like that's something that the Nexus phones didn't have. Is they had worked out deals, like individual deals with carriers, but they didn't have an actual distribution chain where just straight up every phone that they came out with could go to Verizon, or every phone they came out with could go to, well, any carrier. That was something Motorola actually had. And they highlighted that as one of the perks of buying Motorola. Of course, they would ultimately not use it, but that's a separate issue. And of course, that was one of the things that they did sell off to Lenovo. So I think that's what Belkin did, and Belkin's been around for so long and established those long-time contracts with everything from Target to Staples to Office Depot to Walmart to whoever else. Most companies haven't done that. So, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. You can walk into those stores and Belkin is like one of 2 to 3 company brands that you'll find in all of them. Especially for certain product lines. Like, you could go buy like a Belkin router. You probably shouldn't, because wow, is that security going to be awful. But you could go get one. And there aren't many other brands that you can reliably find on store shelves. So yeah, you're totally right. That's working for Belkin. I don't think that works for Sonos. I don't see Sonos on a lot of store shelves. I assume that they're in Best Buy. I can't think of anywhere else that I've ever seen Sonos products. And honestly, I'm not even sure they're in Best Buy. I just assume they are.
Yeah, and I'm sure it also helped that Belkin was doing this
forever ago.
20, 25 years ago, maybe more. Like I think I have a USB audio adapter from Belkin that is like from the early 2000s somewhere. And it still works.
The reason that I named off Belkin routers is because I actually used to have one. So yeah, they've definitely been, and that was an ancient router. That was I'm pretty sure in the pre-in days. So yeah, it's a thing. I don't deny that for a second, but I don't think Sonos has that sort of distribution chain. And I did check, at least BestBuy.com sells their products, and I'm assuming that they have them in stores. So yeah, Sonos products are on store shelves in Best Buy. I don't have any idea where else sells Sonos, but I think the list is a lot shorter. So, I mean, they can do what you're saying. I don't think there's anything stopping them, but I don't picture them being as successful.
Yeah, well, I think they should let us in there, and we could probably figure something out.
I mean, so far we've really been batting 1,000. So yeah,
that's true. I'm always right and never wrong, and everyone needs to remember that.
And I'm always righter and even less wrong. Just a thing to keep in mind.
And speaking of us knowing so much business smarts and everyone else being a dumb, stupid guy, Intel has a new CEO.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
So Intel had intern CEOs for a while, and now they have a new official guy. Is it Lip-Bu Tan?
Yes, Lip-Bu Tan.
Okay.
So
he's the new. What was he doing before this? I forgot to read this.
So he was already on the Intel board for a long time. Prior to that, or the thing that he was best known for doing was, where was it? It was, I know the name of the company, but it is just not quite coming to me. Cadence Design Systems. He was CEO there from 2009 to 2021. And then after that, I believe, let's see. I think he was just on the board at Intel after that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in this press release, but I know somewhere else they said that focusing on the Intel foundries would be a focus now, which the plan was previously to sell those off. So I'm guessing there's some big strategic changes that will happen soon. So,
I mean, so that emphasis I put on the Sonos interim CEO being an interim CEO, and generally you don't make a lot of decisions in a position like that. I think it is plainly obvious. This guy's job, yes. He is going to be making some big decisions, and I assume they're going to come very quickly. Maybe not in like the first week per se, but I would expect we're probably going to be hearing fairly big news within probably the next, I'm gonna say 2 to 3 weeks, as he probably gets gets meetings out of the way, gets everything in order, and then starts scheduling out really big announcements.
Intel merges with Sonos.
Oh God. Oh God, it's over. Well, hey, at least that's the end of x86. So yeah, I am curious what this is going to do, because we're a matter of just steps away from figuring out, has Intel's problem all along been just some crummy leaders? Is this guy going to step in and it's just like, oh, breath of fresh air, we finally have somebody who's ambitious and knows what to do and has strategies, as opposed to the goofballs that we've seen screwing up in the past? Or is this going to be a case of whoops, turns out Intel just lost all their talent, they don't really have a direction and to turn it around, like this is a ship that's just too big to turn around in any sort of decent time? In other words, are we going to see the stock price go up quickly, or are we going to see the whoops, this was just an error, and let's watch as Intel just flails for like another 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, and it's especially difficult when Intel's main problem is like hardware manufacturing, which takes a very long time to see the results of any change or new construction. So that's going to be interesting. It is still kind of crazy that Intel is in the spot where they're like struggling while how many PCs every year ship with their CPUs and how many servers are using their stuff. Like AMD is eating their lunch in some areas for sure. But like they still get license money off of them. So it's like it feels like a wonder of capitalism where we got led to this moment where we see Intel as like this failed entity when it's like there's still a lot of computers with their stuff in it.
Well, okay, I don't disagree with you. In fact, I totally agree with you. When you have a company,
because I'm never wrong. We've been over this.
Yes. Obviously, yes. Intel's a company that is shipping tons and tons of product every month, and it's absolutely getting used in current products. I emphasize current because AMD is knocking at their door. They have been for a while. AMD is also in a decent position with GPUs, even though NVIDIA's clearly been leading them. It's happened, 20 dozen times throughout the history of AMD and then ATI before that, where like every few months, all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, did ATI/AMD just come out with a new GPU that's going to be NVIDIA's latest GPU? And then, we see the same sort of thing happening with AMD processors. There have been many times throughout history that AMD processors have been like the preferred choice for gamers, for casuals, for, the pre-built market, whatever. And so the fact that Intel is constantly vulnerable to that has always been kind of like the shadow looming. Like, it only takes a long enough, or after a long enough period, eventually the perception flips to, oh yeah, AMD's the company to go buy. And it, like, Intel's always had that like mind share of being ahead, but I think they've lost that, and now it's just these are two companies that are just fighting with each other over the same space. The only thing Intel still has is a server market, and let's be honest. Let's just be brutally honest here, because the rumors have circulated too. If Apple were to go into that market, Intel's dead within a couple years. Like, they're cooked.
Not even Apple. Like, there's a bunch of other companies making like ARM server hardware.
Well, yes, but most of them aren't competing at the same level Apple would be. I know everyone likes to talk about Qualcomm being like catching up quickly and stuff, but I think we all know a little better than that. Not to say that Qualcomm wouldn't still be a really threatening entity in that market, but I think it is safe to say that we're just waiting to see how well Intel could actually compete if they started having real competition from the ARM space, or in theory, like RISC-V or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. One thing that comes up after reading a lot about, like in the 90s, there was this concerted push for Wintel, like Windows and Intel being like one in the same platform that was like rapidly evolving together, and that proved impossible to compete with at the time. Obviously now things are different, but like the combined forces of Apple, IBM, and Motorola could not displace that. So part of me does wonder if like part of this Intel turnaround needs to be like very seriously working with Microsoft to address long time problems with Windows on Intel hardware. Not even necessarily hardware issues, just like making it a better experience. And that's something that like I see Microsoft doing a little bit with Qualcomm, where with the new Copilot PC, there's been a concerted push of like, here is a Windows laptop with good battery life. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. It's got some other AI stuff too. Not everyone cares about that, but like, here's like a good, like a better experience than you're used to. And meanwhile, like Windows on x86 like still like doesn't sleep properly. Like this has just been an issue for decades, and like no one cares enough to fit. Like I had a Surface laptop 4, I want to say, that I had for like 6 months before I sold it for a MacBook Air. But in that time, I had issues multiple times where I had it charging on my bedstand, and I'd go to pick it up in the morning and it'd be like hot, and I'm like, what the fuck is this laptop doing? And it was, I eventually found out it was like an HP printer driver that was waking up the computer, and it wouldn't go back to sleep, so it just continued charging while like it was fully on, and it made itself warm. Granted, that was an AMD laptop, but like that's an issue with Intel stuff too. It's just generally x86 BIOS weirdness on Windows. There's a lot of stuff like that has just resulted in the computers being a bad user experience. So I do wonder if part of the turnaround needs to be like actually working with Microsoft more and be like, okay, here's all the reasons Windows laptops suck. Where can we start on this list? Like, what can we do here? And some of that is just like Microsoft service stuff that's not going to change, but a lot of it is like sleep doesn't work, and like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth work weird sometimes, and that's Intel hardware. Or I get the impression that Windows maybe doesn't handle like Intel's newer like big little architecture all that well still. Maybe that's something to focus on, more background optimizations. Like I know these companies obviously work together a lot behind the scenes, because none of like the driver stuff would work if they weren't. Yeah. But I do get the impression that Windows kinds of exists as like a neutral party, and maybe Intel needs it to not be as much for Intel's hardware to be attractive. I don't know. That's something they could do. Again, because I'm full of great ideas and never wrong. So I think that's something they should try.
I'm sure all that's true.
They should also try making good chips.
Yes, that would actually be a really big winning strategy. Especially
cool
chips that don't have particularly egregious security flaws, and chips that don't have manufacturing defects, both of which were things over the last few years, and repeatedly issues over the last few years. So everything you said kind of speaks to one of the big issues, though. If Intel is so reliant on having like basically a private, better than possibly should be available access to Windows collaboration. And if that's what they're so dependent on, that's bad. If your company's whole thing is, we're really hoping that Windows stays successful and that they give us special treatment. Like if that doesn't happen, we're cooked. You can't do that. that means you're done.
Yeah, and I will say I'm not like a currently active Linux user, and I'm not a Linux software developer, but I do get the impression that Intel is still pretty good about Linux support. So I don't know if there's anything really there to improve or something they can do. Although they were making, their NUC computers for a while, but they sold that off. So that's not really a thing anymore. Asus owns that now.
Did they sell that off or just discontinue NUC and let other companies keep making stuff that's kind of semi-branded that way?
I think they gave they at least gave Asus like the brand, like they're the official successor to NUC. I don't know if they were using any of the same manufacturing capabilities, but yeah, like whatever is left of NUCs is now up to Asus.
Okay, yeah, because I just wrote about that in an article, and I kept seeing that the statements that Intel discontinued NUC, and the phrase discontinued was clearly the preferred choice, but it was never clear if there was other stuff happening.
Yeah, initially it was discontinued, and then I think it was like a month or two later where we got the news that Asus was taking it over. So I think the plan was at one point for it to die, and then I'm sure Asus was like, "Hey, we noticed you have you have people buying these things. Can they buy it from us instead, please?" And then the new Asus NUCs seem pretty good. They're like putting the newer chips in them and making different designs. I think some of them even have like dedicated GPUs. But yeah. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I've said over and over again, I really wish Intel would be good, because more competition is good, and Intel is still like the only US based company that's trying to do like advanced silicon manufacturing here, and that seems like something that's probably good to have, not for competition, and also like if you want to be like really annoying about it, then like national security, whatever. But I'd like all these companies to stay around, because there's already so few there's already so little competition in like CPU world. So
it's true, there is less, or there's already not very many, but I feel like we're on the plus side, at least on the precipice of maybe having more competitors, which would be nice.
Yes. And that's a blog post I wrote on my blog like a year ago.
Well, it still hasn't happened, so I'm blaming you. Let's see. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't know what else there really is to say on this. I don't think we know necessarily how Lip Bhutan is going to progress with his strategy. Obviously, we haven't really heard him speak or anything or make too many big declarations. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of his strategy is probably coming in and you brought it up. Obviously, domestic chip manufacturing. I think it's safe to say that he's probably going to be pushing that strategy pretty hard, because it was one of the few things that both the prior administration and the current administration favor. Whether or not they'll be getting the same money for it, we'll see. But I have a feeling part of his part of the reason he was chosen is because he probably was favored to be able to make sure that they keep getting money from the US government. And so be it. I don't see a problem with that. As long as they actually follow through with building that domestic manufacturing and hiring people and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, I think that covers pretty much that part of it. Um, let's see. I don't really have a good, elegant transition into our next topic, or either one of our next topics, but I suppose if we're going to, since we were just talking about Microsoft, let's talk about the Xbox handheld that, you know, is sort of maybe a thing.
Yeah, so I think it was Windows Central that put out a report earlier this week, basically saying that there was a Xbox handheld console in the works. But even in that initial report, it said that it was probably going to run Windows. And then I believe either Microsoft clarified or the Verge got additional details, but basically it's not really an Xbox handheld. It's just like an effort to get handheld gaming PCs like better integration with Windows and Xbox. So they talk about having more of a common Xbox UI across Windows for those form factors, and other optimizations, and maybe they'd get like an Xbox button, like the controllers, that kind of thing. So not really like a handheld that is sold as like another Xbox console, more just like, here is your Xbox certified handheld or whatever. And I didn't really care for what was talked about in that initial report, so I'm kind of less enthused about the thing that's like, oh, it's not even like a Xbox product, it's just kind of in that ecosystem. I don't really like. I say this as someone who is just not really interested in the like Steam Deck category whatsoever, because it feels like the worst of all worlds to me. Like, yeah, it is cool that like you can have some PC games on like a thing you can take on, an airplane or whatever. Like that is cool. But I don't like how big and heavy and low battery life all of them are. And you have the two choices for the software is SteamOS, where you get really great battery life, but also a game you like might just randomly stop working one day, and it might not be clear if it ever does because the game developers are not all testing against the Proton compatibility layer. Or Windows, which is not built for that form factor whatsoever, and also has really bad battery life. So I have like very little interest in either of those options. Like I have my Logitech G Cloud here, that is Android based, and I can stream Xbox stuff. So that's kind of nice as like here's a thing I can play emulators on up until like maxing out at like N64, and some Android games, and I can stream Xbox stuff locally or cloud on top of that. That's a better combo for me. I do wish it had a better screen though. I've been spoiled by OLED. So yeah, I just have like no interest in this product category, and it doesn't really sound like this will be better. Because really the problem with Windows on these handhelds is, number one, the interface is always awful, and number two, the battery life is always awful because it's Windows.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we're talking about with x86, where it's just like battery life sucks on these chips, and partially just because it's a handheld, so it has to have a smaller battery with a power hungry chip in it. Um, so if this means that Microsoft is building like a super tailor-made version of Windows for these handhelds, that's interesting to me. I don't know to what extent they'll go with it. Um, and also what that like custom UI looks like, because I think they would really just need to build a very different interface for Windows, which is something that they uh, last did like a decade ago and no one liked. And in the early days of Windows 10, there was still a distinct like desktop mode and tablet mode, but those still kind of look mostly the same. And the tablet mode wasn't good. And that's why it was eventually just ripped out.
Yeah.
So, I'd like them to try. It seems like, there's clearly a demand for this, even in the issues that exist with it. I think it'd be smart of them to try to build something related to this. Honestly, what I would want is just one of these running the Xbox OS. Like, I feel like the technology has to exist to get like at least Xbox One down to like a handheld design. And like that wouldn't get you a lot of like brand new games necessarily, but there are still a lot of games for that previous generation, plus all of the backwards compatibility games that Xbox has. And then you still got the streaming stuff. So I feel like that at least is possible. Maybe at some point they could figure out some way to get like Xbox Series S performance out of a handheld. That might be stretching it. I don't know. I just like Windows doesn't. It's not the right thing for this, but it's like the only thing that exists.
So where I think this struggles, or rather where Microsoft might be avoiding trying to do what you're describing, is because they watched Sony doing this for years with the PSPs, and frankly, I thought the PSP was a pretty good line. Obviously, they their final the Vita had, I forget how long it was, but the Vita was basically a complete flop for like 3 years or something. They finally kind of brought it around and got it into a decent place, but that was long after it was already kind of seen as a big mistake. Anyway, the original PSP was obviously a much bigger success. The thing is, I think Microsoft is looking at the Vita going, yeah, we need to make sure we don't do that. And everything that I think they want to try doing, especially basically coming out with a handheld that can play previous gen games, that's really not far off from what the Vita was. And any of their business models that would involve doing that, by and large, you would just sell a handheld console that a whole bunch of people would play games they probably already bought. And that's, sure. I think that's a hard business model to work with, because a whole lot of people already own those games, and you're not going to get a lot of people to rebuy the games, because why would they? And chances are, because a handheld console usually isn't going to produce a large profit, in fact, you might actually be selling it at a loss in order to get the price to a good place. Chances are at that point you're not going to sell very many, or you're going to actually intentionally lose money on them. There's I think not a lot of good scenarios where this ends for them making just your classic handheld. So while that would obviously be the better product, I think the logic of going with a Windows handheld that they can justify charging more for, it would obviously be Windows, but it would also be a game console, sort of, like it could act as one. I see that being their reason for doing something like this. But at the same time, it is just objectively the less desirable product too, because it probably isn't going to play as well as a dedicated piece of hardware. It's not going to have a lot of those advantages. So, yeah, I think that I could easily be wrong on this, but
Yeah, and like I can definitely see a possibility where a thing like this running the Xbox OS is like functionally a better product in that like it runs the games it was designed for. But it would also be possible that there would be no battery life improvement. So that's probably a trade-off most people wouldn't take.
yeah.
Because it's like if I can choose between 2 hours of battery life to play, Halo 3 or I don't know, a newer PC game, they'd probably just do that one. So yeah, I don't know. This is like kind of a dumb form factor that I don't really want to use, but is popular because people would like to play these games portably.
Well, and
I don't know.
there's
All the
obviously
options
also that.
seem rough.
Yeah, there's also that scenario where you could go with the portable form factor while still having a bad battery life, and it can be successful as long as the idea is you're not gonna like hop on a plane. Well, a plane's a bad example, but you're not gonna go someplace where you can't plug in and play this for hours. However, if you can go on a plane where you could plug in, or go sit in an office or sit in your bedroom or whatever, like as long as you can be tethered to a wall, that's a product some people would want. It's just maybe not it's not as sexy of a product, it's not as attractive of a product, but I think long run it could sell decently well, just like that PlayStation remote thing. I think the mere fact that actually sold to people and turned out to be reasonably successful is very telling that handheld gaming is a thing people want, and they're willing to sacrifice in really dumb ways, like buying a very overpriced remote control with a screen.
Yeah, I mean that's what I bought. So mine was cheaper and has a worse screen, but it is nice to play games in my bed that are the same games on my Xbox, and I can just go back over the Xbox with the same save file and keep playing them later.
Yeah.
Diablo said Switch 2 wins again. Yeah, I mean, Switch is going to have games that don't randomly break because of compatibility issues.
However, it's going to have games that just randomly break because the developers can't build a current game that stands up to the expectations of Xbox and Sony consoles while also playing on the incredibly low power hardware of the Switch. So,
and all the games will be $60
yes.
forever. That's going to be like the most intolerable genre of tech videos for a while when the Switch 2 comes out. It's like, where would you buy your Switch when you can just buy your Steam Deck? There's going to be a million of those.
Counterpoint.
It's like, yes, you're so right. I bought my I'm comparing my 18-wheeler versus a speedboat. These are fair and useful comparisons.
Okay, 2 counterpoints. First, I disagree. There will not be a million videos. It'll be like 5 million. Second, it's going to be... We already know what this is. We've seen it a million times. It's just like every PC Master Race type has always done. Like, there's nothing different here. Anyone who's advocating for Steam Deck is also probably a PC Master Race fan. So, and look, I'm not trying to beat up on that group either.
No, I'll do it.
Well, I'm not going to beat up.
It's so annoying.
Okay, sorry. I probably should clarify. The PC Master Race types that are telling everyone how how dumb they are for getting consoles and not getting a PC, which is, we call them PC Master Race for a reason because they're self-identifying this way. Yeah, I'll beat up on them for that behavior. But any PC player who just simply will say, look, you know what? I'm weighing the options. I'm choosing this. I don't care what you pick. Yeah, I'm not going to beat up on that group.
Yes, that's fine. Again, you can. It's true. You could buy things and not being annoying about it.
Yes.
I know you can do it. I believe in each and every person watching this that they can do that.
The internet has taught many people that is not an option.
You can just buy the thing that's best for you and use it and say you like it. That's perfect. That's allowed.
Corbin, that is not allowed. You've been on Reddit. You know this is true.
That's true. Well, now I hide all my opinions behind links, so the Redditors don't find them.
Yes, as long as your title doesn't give away your opinion, you're immune to criticism from Reddit.
Yeah, that's where I got wrong, because my last major Reddit incident was I wrote an article on How to Geek. I believe it was titled "You Might Not Need a Number Pad on your keyboard" or something like that, and the article was just about keyboards with numpads built into them are really big and they can mess up your posture, and they have done for me. Or because when I had bigger keyboards on my desk, it would push my mouse over to the edge to the point where my arms are not level, whatever. So my argument in that article was hey, maybe you don't need it and you can just get a smaller keyboard that's going to be better for your posture, and you can still get a number pad and get a little wireless one you can put on the other side, and it's fine. And I think this is mostly an issue that affects right-handed people, because if you're left-handed and you have your mouse on the left side where the number pad usually is, and it doesn't matter. So That was my article, but of course the title got screenshotted and put on the PC Master Race sub, and there were people saying a lot of not nice things. That were probably being over the top, but still seemed excessive. So
I mean, if a day goes by without somebody threatening your life over a random little completely irrelevant opinion, well, obviously that's a day that Reddit was shut down.
That's true, and good thing that they don't have reading skills, so they couldn't find my email on that article, or I might have got some more comments. But yeah, here's my small keyboard. Everyone get mad at me over my small keyboard. Little cute guy. No number pad on here. I do like them sometimes, but not for the cost of my mouse being permanently pushed over to the edge. Oh yeah, small keyboard gang.
Yep. Well, to be fair, I've been rocking the Apple Magic keyboard, the original version that took AA's, for a very long time, and that also had no extended keys. So, yeah, look, back when I was in college and programming in languages where having a number pad actually mattered, genuinely it made a real difference, I will go on a solid defense that's back then it made sense and it was worth having, and only for certain groups. These days, I really look, unless you're working as an accountant or need to actually 10 key a whole lot for other reasons, I just cannot fathom a reason why anybody needs the full number pad. And I'll go out on a limb and say, if you're not a writer, you also don't really have any benefit to those other keys that tend to come on that same 10 key keyboard. The ones that are like
the line end ones.
Well, the page up, page down. End of line, that stuff. Chances are you don't need those things unless you're unless you're writing all day long or maybe coding.
Yeah, I mean, like, as someone who grew up on like Macs that mostly didn't have those keyboards, like even when I do have them, I forget they're there and I don't use them. They're just extra useless buttons over there. And I have a strong suspicion that's true of like most people my age and younger.
Yeah.
Is like yeah, everyone raised on iPad keyboards is like home button. What's that?
Yeah, and look, that's absolutely a thing. It's in part age, but it's not. Honestly, I don't think it's about age. It is a factor of what it is that you do, and whether or not
Yeah.
it needs this, and whether or not software has already kind of solved this issue. Look, page up and page down kind of got solved when, or for many keyboards, when you started being able to hold down the FN key and just hit up and down. I think it's
mouse wheel.
Yeah, I think it's FN. Yeah, obviously a mouse wheel started fixing this because those keys mostly went away or stopped being as useful once people could just spin a mouse wheel. A lot of the other stuff also stopped being useful as different features and functions came into effect. No joke, even stuff as simple as like hitting Command or Control F to search, being able to quickly get yourself to a spot, like that actually kind of got it or removed some of the uses for various other like navigation tools, because in many cases people can get to a spot on a page faster doing that than they could just by hitting other stuff. Again, sometimes we're talking about like coding here where that makes more sense, but
yeah, like I wouldn't dream of like walking up to like a professional Excel user and being like, what do you need that number pad for, buddy? What you do?
Yeah.
Probably just whoop my ass right there.
I'd like to watch that actually. But yeah, there's so much stuff where there's certain groups that absolutely still want and need the 10 key, but most people don't. And that's why, look, I actually have a laptop that has a 10 key on it. It's one laptop. One. Actually, I think I've had two. But I haven't had one in a decade. Or, haven't purchased one in a decade that had a 10 key on it. And honestly, like, good luck finding a laptop that still has one. And obviously that's laptops versus external keyboards, but fact of the matter is, I think laptops in many ways define what our experience is with computers, because most people are buying laptops. And that's not to diminish. There's obviously plenty of people buying desktops for various reasons, video editing, gaming, etc., etc. But practical reality, even most of those people are not buying a 10 key keyboard.
Yeah, and touch gestures on the touchpad are way better than trying to navigate a page in increments with keyboard keys.
Yeah. At least in most instances. Again, if you're a writer, or if you're doing a lot of coding, some of these things can be exceptions. It depends on what you do, and your workflows and stuff like that. So it's certainly not going to say nobody should be using them, but certain groups are going to use them a lot more than others. And most groups, I think, don't use them at all. None of this was supposed to be about the subject of keyboards.
We were talking about handheld console.
Yeah, basically.
Anyway, so yes, that's the lesson: is buy the keyboard for you, and don't listen to people on Reddit ever, and just buy the things you want to buy, and don't be weird about them on the internet. Moving on. Last thing is Chromecast broke. Chromecast machine broke at the McDonald's. So for several days now, I think, the second generation Chromecast and Chromecast audio have been unable to cast any audio or video. And it's not in this 9 to 5 article. I thought I saw something somewhere about this being like a expired SSL certificate. I don't know where I saw it, so I might be hallucinating that.
It's certainly a possibility, but I would doubt it.
Yeah, it's probably DNS. It's always DNS.
Yeah.
It's DNS or something dumb, but Google even if you have this issue, do not factory reset it. Google is actually telling people, please don't do that. So that might make it worse. They don't describe how, but yeah, this is just a thing that's been broken. So if you have this issue, you're not alone. They actually are sending emails to like everyone who has one of these Chromecasts. I got one. I assume because I had a Chromecast audio on my account at some point. Maybe a second gen too. I don't remember if I had a second gen.
It's actually
normal
weird.
Chromecast.
I haven't gotten an email about this. Or no, I bet it went to that. Damn it! Because really quick, I'm gonna do my rant about Google's mail habits here, but let me check my receipts folder because I bet it's in there. Oh,
Stupid fly flying around.
it's not. Why hasn't Google sent me an email? What the hell?
These are the only ones that are fine.
Well, mine haven't worked in ages, so yeah, this has been an ongoing problem I constantly complain about. But yeah, strangely, I don't have any emails about this. Because I definitely have had Chromecast audios on my account. I've had Gen 2s and Gen 1s on my account. And plus, just for as long as I can remember, well, not literally as long as I can remember, but for long time, I haven't been able to cast from YouTube to any Android TV devices. Just straight up, I can't visit YouTube on a laptop and cast to an Android TV device. That feature has been broken for at least a year, probably longer. So, yeah, it just seems like everything cast related is broken for me now.
Nice. So yeah, so if you have that issue, do not factory reset it. Google says please don't do that. It will just eventually be fixed in the cloud at some point. So
maybe.
I wonder if the person I sold my Chromecast audio to is annoyed right now.
I imagine a lot of people are annoyed because, Chromecast, despite obviously being at this stage pretty old and not super heavily used, I assume, I bet the people who do use them still use them a lot.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's it.
Well,
not much else to talk about here.
Yeah, that's true, and I don't think there's any deep analysis to do on this, unfortunately, because look, it's just the typical Google broke a thing probably because someone wasn't paying enough attention to it, which, hey, for something they don't even sell anymore, it makes sense. But yeah, I just can't imagine there's just that much concern over this, so at least inside of Google. So they're probably tasking one person to get to it once they have some free time, which is probably not instantly forthcoming. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to this either.
Not much yet.
Is there anything else we want to babble about? Because I don't have any other immediately prevalent topics.
Nope.
Okay. Well, abrupt as it is, I guess we are wrapping up. So with that, Corbin, anything you'd like to talk about before we go?
A lot, but it would be inadvisable to do so.
His lawyer tells him so. All right. Well, in that case, go find Corbin on the socials. That's where he's found.
Yeah.
And of course, go visit the Space Bar for all of his thoughts. And as for myself, I will be back around this weekend for some game streams on Marvel Rivals and Overwatch. Mostly Overwatch, probably. Though we'll see, I do need to get caught up on some Rivals challenges. And for, let's see. Oh, and of course, we will be back next week on Wednesday with another RambleCast. Where I anticipate we're going to get to tell yet another company, told you so. Because we're obviously smarter than them. It just keeps happening. Wow. Honestly, we're totally going to put our foot in our mouths one of these days by telling a company that they're totally wrong, and they're going to prove that they actually can figure a couple things out from time to time.
And shout out to Diablo and Austin for sticking around to the end.
Yes. Thank you guys. It's great to have you here. Of course,
I didn't have much to say about everything Diablo said, but I acknowledge his presence.
I mean, I got to make
insight.
a Dorito sponsorship joke, so I'm pretty happy about that. And also, small thanks to Brawl. I know he'll not hear it here, but he was here for at least a minute during the start, and he did call Corbin old, so proper.
I'm gonna beat him up.
Yes.
After the Excel guys finish beating me up.
Yes. Head over to Eastern Europe and get right on that. But anyway, with that, thank you all for coming by, hanging out, being part of the chat room, and keeping us company. I hope you all have an excellent rest of your week, and we'll catch you all in the next one. Good night, everybody.